There we go. All right. So last time we talked about the brain, right? Now, the brain, remember, is where we are receiving sensory information, we are analyzing that information, and then we are also initiating motor output. So we're telling effectors what to do. Okay. The spinal cord is about getting that information to and from the brain. Okay. Which means the major role that the spinal cord has is basically going to act as a link that is going to be between the brain and then the rest of the body. Okay. So it is basically carrying input from the body and moving that towards the brain. And then we're also going to have some lanes of highway that are going to be carrying information from the brain. So commands from the brain out. Okay. Now, it is doing one other thing, though, that's going to be very important. And that is, it is also going to act as a reflex center for our spinal nerves. This means that if we receive some sort of stimulus information, that we can initiate a really, really fast reaction that does not actually involve the brain. Okay. So that these reflex centers can basically say, hey, move your hand out of the way. At the same time, it's sending a message to the brain that says, hey, we have pain in this particular spot. Okay. But this way we can limit tissue damage as much as possible. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. So here we have an image of the spinal cord. Okay. Now, the spinal cord is going to start right at the foramen magnum of the skull. The moment that we have nervous tissue exit the foramen magnum of the skull, that means we are now in the spinal cord. And it's going to travel, of course, through the vertebral foramen in our vertebrae. So remember how we had that little opening at the top of every vertebrae. So it's just going to be passing through that, and it's going to go all the way down, and it's going to go all the way down to L1 or so, at which point we're going to have this structure right here called the conus medullaris. Right here is actually where our spinal cord stops. Okay. Our spinal cord is going to stop being a spinal cord, and instead we're going to start calling it the cauda equina. Okay. Now, basically what this means is we will unravel all of the structures. It's going to go from being tight as this really tight, dense individual structure to now being a bunch of individual nerve fibers, or at least clusters of nerve fibers. And like I said, it's going to happen right here around L1. Okay. Now, this part where we go from being really, really tight to being really, really open, we call this region here the cauda equina. So cauda means tail, equina means horse. So this is the horse's tail. This is literally a ponytail. Okay, that's what it's telling you right here. We're going just like so if you were to make a ponytail, you have a bunch of hair that is really, really dense, and then you have a bunch of hairs that are loose, right? Yeah. So that's essentially what's happening here. Our conus medullaris is that last little bit of really, really tight part. So that's basically where we have the wrap of our ponytail. And then we let things loose into the actual tail-shaped structure here, where we kind of fan stuff out a little bit. Okay. Now, we will continue having the central canal of our spinal cord is going to continue all the way down here. We're going to call it the filum terminale, and it's going to go all the way down to our coccyx. But we're going to have a bunch of splits and a bunch of breakoffs of these nerve fibers as they exit the intervertebral foramina. So that space in between, say, one vertebrae and the next, as they leave that little hole, we're going to call those spinal nerves. Okay. Now we have 31 pairs of these spinal nerves. That means we have 31 different paired places where these nerves exit those intervertebral foramina. And we're going to count those based off of their regions the same way that we would vertebrae. So we're going to have 8 exits in the cervical region. So C1 to C8, T1 to T12, L1 through L5, and then S1 for sacral all the way down through S5. And then we're going to have a coccygeal nerve. Okay. So those are all of these spinal nerves that are going to exit. Now, the spinal cord itself is going to vary a little bit from top to bottom, both in its size. So we're going to have a couple of enlargements. We're going to have one enlargement right here in the cervical region, and we're going to have another enlargement down here in our lumbar region. They're at the base of our lumbar and thoracic regions. What we're doing here, the reason that we're having these two little enlargements is because of the massive amount of new input that we're getting into those particular parts of the spinal cord. These parts of the spinal cord are actually going to be where we are having nervous input come in from the arms, and then where we're having additional nervous input come in from the legs. So because these are such large parts of our body, and because they are extremities, and we have incredibly dense areas of nervous like innervation in places like the palms of our hands, tips of our fingers, and stuff like that, that is a boatload of information. Okay, so that's a whole lot more information cars that we're trying to get onto our particular highway. So just like if you were to take a whole bunch more cars and try and get them onto a road, and you don't want impingement, you don't want people to slow down, the only way to really have or deal with that is to just add more lanes. Okay, so make the road bigger. That's basically what we're doing here. We are basically making the road bigger in these enlargement areas for all of this new information that we're having come in from the legs and this new information that we're having come in from the arms. Okay, so that's why we're going to have those enlargements. Now, something else fun happens with our spinal nerves, and that we're going to have many of them come together and form what we call plexuses. Okay, so a plexus is basically just a network. So instead of just having an individual spinal nerve come out and kind of go out and do its thing, instead we'll have individual spinal nerves come out where then they will start to interface and interact with one another, and they'll become either a bundle or they'll just be this kind of big mess of nerve fibers that it's hard to really tell which one started where. That's because we have like a network of spinal nerve fibers instead of just individuals. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So like I said, we're going to call this a plexus. We're going to have 4 major plexuses. We have 2 in the cervical region. So we have the cervical plexus up here, which is C1 to C4. Then we're going to have another one that's going to be between C6 and T1. Okay, C6 and T1, we're not going to call a cervical plexus. Instead, we're going to call this the brachial plexus because this is the bundle of nerves that's going to lead to the arm. So notice if you follow these fibers that it would follow out to the arm. So this is our brachial plexus here, and that also leads to our cervical enlargement. That's a bunch of new information. We have a lumbar plexus here. And then we also have a sacral plexus down here. So lumbar plexus dealing with kind of internal organs. Sacral plexus can be dealing with stuff with the legs. Okay, but either way, we have individual nerve fibers coming out by themselves and then interfacing with one another and forming these plexuses. Now, when we look at each spinal nerve, so this would be, say, C1 or C8, it doesn't really matter. Whenever those nerves are coming up towards the spinal cord, we would have our intervertebral foramina somewhere like right here, and then the nerves will split. Whenever these nerves split, we're going to call these splits roots. Okay, so we're going to go from the spinal nerve to now the spinal nerve roots. We're going to have one of these going to the posterior side of the spinal cord. We're going to have the other one coming to the anterior side. So we have a posterior root and we have an anterior root. Now, the posterior root is going to contain this big bump. This big bump we're going to call the posterior root ganglion or the dorsal root ganglion. In chapter 12, ganglion was sufficient. Okay, that would be a right answer if I was asking about this in chapter 12. Now it's not. The main reason is that we're going to see a couple of other ganglion in some other places, but also now we know specifically what this is. Now that we understand that this is the posterior root. Now, importantly here, the spinal nerves themselves are going to be mixed nerves. These are going to be both sensory nerves and motor nerves, all in the same bundle. Okay, the roots are not. The roots are not mixed. The anterior root is motor nerves. So the anterior root contains information going away from the spinal cord. The posterior root is going to contain information going towards the spinal cord. Okay, so posterior root is information to the spinal cord. Anterior root is information away. That's one of the other reasons that we need to know that this is the posterior root ganglion, because if we can remember that it's the posterior root ganglion and we know that this side is posterior, that can maybe help us remember that this side is also going to be sensory. Okay, so if I were to look at a picture like this and say, okay, like what is this structure? Like, oh, it's the posterior root ganglion. What type of information does this nerve contain? It would be sensory information. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now, here we have the spinal cord itself, or as well as inside the vertebrae. Now, just like we had with the brain, we have our series of 3 membranes of connective tissue that we're going to use for protection. We have the dura, which is going to be the outermost layer. So that's this one right here. Deep to that, it's hard to see in this picture, there's another little line that would be our arachnoid matter. So underneath this, we are now filling in, or in what we call the arachnoid space. And then finally, touching the actual surface of the spinal cord itself is our pia mater. Now, our pia mater is interesting in the spinal cord in that it is actually going to contain a couple of extensions. The extensions of the pia mater are going to be found right here and right here. Okay, these are what we call denticulate ligaments, okay? So these denticulate ligaments are important because these are basically going to tie the spinal cord in place. So like if you've seen episode 8, or sorry, episode 7 of the Star Wars trilogy, or the new Star Warses, and BB-8 like sends out these little arms to hold himself in place when the ship's all rolling around. That's basically what we're doing here. We are reaching out and we are grabbing both sides of the spinal cord so that now we are held firmly in place. If anything happens to try and pulse to the right, we have tension on one side. If anything happens to pulse the other way, we have tension on the other side. So this way the spinal cord stays in place. This way it doesn't get pinched or impinged by any of these bones here, because that would be bad, right? Yeah. So we have our dura, arachnoid matter, pia mater, and we have our denticular ligaments helping hold it in place. Now, another big difference between the meninges and the spinal cord versus in the brain is that we actually have some space outside the dura. So in between the dura and the bone, notice that we have this thin layer of adipose tissue acting as a cushion. This thin layer of adipose tissue outside the dura is called the found in what we call the epidural space. Epi meaning outside, dural. So outside the dural space, we now have an epidural space right here. So when people get numbed for childbirth and stuff like that, the needle is being placed and the drug is being placed right here into this gap. This way it can surround and envelop all of those nerves in that particular area, okay? Now, they're doing this in something like L2 to L3 in the spaces, which means we don't have the spinal cord proper anymore. We now have the cauda equina. So there's a little bit more space for the nerves and stuff. We still have dura, though. But what they're going to be doing then is they're actually just going to feel for layers of connective tissue as they're taking the needle in. They're going to be feeling for it to pop through layers of connective tissue, and they're counting the layers as it's popping through, and then they're going to find an open space or feel for an open space with the needle, at which point they will inject it, and it's just going to surround and envelop all of those nerve fibers in that area, deadening the sensation, so hopefully stopping the person from feeling pain. Okay? Yeah. That's the idea. Now, we can see these layers of connective tissue a little bit better here. So the dura extends all the way out, even around the dorsal root ganglion. The arachnoid matter kind of starts more medial to the posterior ganglion. Though we still have this kind of web-like appearance of the actual layer of tissue itself. But once again, we don't have this big mesh in between the layers like we had in the arachnoid matter in the brain. Hey. All right, so now let's go ahead and look at the matter of the spinal cord itself. So once again, we have in our posterior root, we have sensory information. Well, as we're bringing that sensory information in, it's going to need to interact with some interneurons. Because remember, we have interneurons as this special class of neuron that is there to help analyze and interpret information. So we have to have somewhere for these interneurons to live. The interneurons are going to live in what we call the dorsal horn. So when you look at the spinal cord, we can see white matter and gray matter. So gray matter is this kind of brownie looking stuff, and then the white stuff is our white matter. Remember that white matter is composed of myelinated axons. Okay, so this is information moving very, very, very fast. It's just the axon portion of a nerve covered in myelin, and it's running to or from the brain. Okay, the gray matter is what's going to contain the cell bodies inside the central nervous system. So the gray matter is going to contain cell bodies, and those cell bodies are going to either be interneurons or they're going to be the cell bodies of our motor neurons. Okay, so the cell bodies of our interneurons are going to live in what we call the posterior horn. Posterior because it's pointing to this posterior side. We know that's posterior because we also know that this is posterior. Okay, so posterior horn is going to contain interneurons. The anterior horn, so if this is posterior, this has to be anterior. The anterior horn is going to contain the cell bodies for our somatic motor neurons. Okay, so somatic meaning that it's going to muscles. Okay, so actual skeletal muscles, so muscles that we can control. So if you are sending out a signal to something that you can control, that signal is going to start kind of here, or at least get sent out through the spinal nerve starting here. The lateral horn, that's this little bump out to the side. This lateral horn is the bump out to the side, and it's going to contain the cell bodies for visceral motor information. So glands, cardiac muscle, smooth muscle, all of that stuff is going to start here in the lateral horns of our spinal cord. So interneurons in the posterior horn, motor neurons in the anterior and lateral horns. Now, the white matter we can also break up a little bit. So the white matter we're going to break up into what we call funiculi. Okay, so this is basically like a fun column. Okay, so the funiculi here on the posterior side, we're going to call the posterior funiculus. This one is out on the sides beside the lateral horns. We're going to call this the lateral funiculus. This one would be, anyone want to guess? What do you think? We had posterior, anterior, lateral. We have posterior, lateral, which means this would probably be anterior. Okay, so this is our anterior funiculus right here. We can further break these down. We just don't need to for the purpose of what I want y'all to know. That's plenty. Now, we're also going to see a couple of other big structures in the spinal cord. Namely, we have this little hole in the middle that we're going to call the central canal. This is the area through which we are going to make and circulate cerebral spinal fluid. We also have a shallow groove on the backside. So on the posterior side, so we're going to call this the posterior median sulcus. And we have a much deeper groove on the anterior side. So we're going to call this the anterior median fissure. This basically is just showing you how complicated those tracts and those funiculi can be. Once again, I'm not going to ask you any of these or have you identify them. I just want you to just see that we can track them a little bit. I also want to draw y'all's attention to the fact that that the spinal cord itself is going to look different in different regions. It's going to have different proportions of gray matter and white matter as we move up. And this actually makes a lot of sense, considering that down here in the lumbar or sacral regions, the only information that's traveling through here, remember that's what the white matter is for, is information that's traveling through that region. The only information that would be traveling through here would be stuff going further down or initiating itself further down than this particular spot, which means there's very little of that because there's not much space past this, which means we're mostly going to be left with white matter or with gray matter and just a tiny bit of white matter because there's nothing really past it to be sending information through that white matter. As we move up, though, we're going to see the white matter increase. We're basically adding cars onto this highway as we're moving information up towards the brain because now we have information. So say we're looking right here, this is the top of our lumbar, for instance. Well, this means that we're carrying information now, not just from the legs, but now also from the sacral region and from the coccygeal region, all coming through here. So that's more stuff. So that means we need more white matter. As we move up, we're going to get even more white matter. And then we get into the cervical region, we're going to have even more white matter because now this is moving through the cervical region. We have information going to the cervical region. We have information going out to the arms. We have information going to the torso. We have information going to the abdominal region. We have information going to the legs, right? So that's a lot of information here. So that means we have to have a whole lot more lanes of our information highway just to make room for it all. But as we move down, we don't need nearly as many lanes since many of those cars have either not gotten on the road yet or they have already exited, okay? So there's a lot fewer sources for that information. That's all just kind of physiology stuff. I think I need to cut us a couple of slides up. All right, now, after our nerves break out of the vertebrae and we split into form our spinal nerves, we're also going to see in many cases a couple of extra other splits that we're going to call ramises, okay? So this is our posterior ramus right here, posterior because it's pointing out to the posterior side. These are going to be very important because we need to innervate the muscles of the skin or muscles and skin of our back. Okay, so we have to get that information either out to that or from these areas. Okay, so we're going to do that through these posterior ramises. So if a bug lands right here, we can now sense it. We send that information back to this nerve. So now we can get it back towards the spinal cord so that we know what's going on. Okay, so instead of having to wrap all the way like around the body, like we just basically take a little shortcut and go past the ears of our little giraffes. Okay. We're also going to see a branch come off on the anterior side that we're going to call an anterior ramus. This branch is much larger, and these will split and form this kind of ladder-like structure on either side of the vertebrae. Okay, so we're going to have one on each side of the body of the vertebrae, and these are basically just going to line up, and it's going to look like rungs on a ladder. Okay, where each of these is also going to be connected to these little bumps. Remember, these bumps in the nerves we call ganglions. So this one is going to be our sympathetic trunk ganglion. But this is also why we can't just call the other one a ganglion anymore, since now we have a ganglion from which to distinguish it. Okay. Now, one of the reasons this is important, though, is because each spinal nerve is going to split out and it's going to innervate a particular region of the body. Okay. It will have particular organs it will innervate, but it will also get information to and from particular places on the outside of the body. So this is one of the ways that your brain can map back where the spider is. Okay. Is because, like, okay, I sensed information from this particular dermatome, and that means all of the information on this little band, for instance, will be carried by the same exact spinal nerve. Now, your brain can usually hyperlocalize some of these things if it's something like from a sensory receptor in the skin, and we have multiples of them. It can figure out which area of sensory receptors it came from, so we can localize, hey, the spider was roughly in this area, okay? Which is very, very handy. This is also useful because other organs that these nerves innervate will oftentimes refer their pain to particular places or to these same dermatomes, okay? A good example of this is T10. So the T10 dermatome is right here, even with your belly button. So in this kind of umbilical region, okay? Your appendix is a special little spot on your large intestine. So your large intestine kind of looks roughly something like this, where you have ascending, transverse, sigmoid colon, okay, and then it goes down to your rectum and anus and all that fun stuff, okay? Well, it has this special little spot right here, this little tail. This tail is your appendix. And I have drawn this roughly to scale. This should tell you that if you know where this is, you probably should, then this is right basically here, okay? Fairly low, inside your hips, it's that low, okay? So if my appendix is here, well, this is innervated by the T10 nerve. So if your belly button's here, okay, the same nerve that innervates this dermatome is also connected to your appendix. When this thing hurts, it's going to send a pain signal up through that T10 spinal nerve. And the area that's going to hurt whenever you have issues with your appendix is right here at your belly button. If you were to present to an emergency room with excruciating, searing, burning pain where it feels like you're being stabbed, and they say where, and you grab your belly button, they will go and they will image you, not at your belly button, they will image you here. They're going to double check to make sure that this isn't looking normal, that it's swollen and angry and hopefully not ruptured, at which point they will cut this out. If you don't and it ruptures, you can die, because this is where we keep a store of extra bacteria. Your whole large intestine is filled with bacteria. There are more bacterial cells in your large intestine than there are human cells in your body. Total. Yeah, it's bad. And we store extras of all of these bacteria that live here. We store extras right here in our appendix, so that if something happens to us, we have like, say you get sick, like you get food poisoning or something like that, and you just clear out all of this stuff, where you take an antibiotic or something like that, and it causes you to have a bunch of diarrhea, and you clear out all of your intestine, that we have some extra bacteria to basically reseed all of these populations. However, this also means that it's filled with bacteria. And if this breaks open, that means bacteria are going to get out into a bunch of places where we don't want bacteria. And so you end up with infections everywhere. So yeah, it can be very, very bad. Lots of people do die from appendix stuff, even now. So yeah, I'm glad your dad did not, though. That would be rough. This story would be way less entertaining. Now, something else fun with this, and I'm going to use this one because I am an example here. Back in the day, chickenpox viruses were not thought to be all that serious or all that long lasting. So it wasn't terribly common for people not to get their kids vaccinated against it, because it wasn't terribly dangerous. Like, not many kids die from chickenpox or whatever. It's like, we just won't vaccinate, even though vaccines have been available for it since the 60s, maybe 70s. But either way, instead, what they would do a lot of times is, if one kid in a school or in a class got chickenpox, parents would make sure that all of the kids got it. And they would have chickenpox parties, even, where it's like, oh, this kid has chickenpox. We're just going to have a bunch of people interact with it. That way, all the kids get chickenpox all at the same time. That way, kindergarten is just a graveyard for a week. And then everybody's back the next week and we're all good, rather than having to like worry about catching individual people up and staggering all this stuff. This way, everybody misses the same amount of time because everybody's sick all at the same time. And then we can come back and just like act like nothing happened. Everybody was just on vacation for a week, even though they were itching and having burning fevers and all kinds of fun stuff that are associated with chickenpox. Yeah, absolutely. But that's what people did. So my brother came down with chickenpox, I'm pretty sure, from one of these parties. And then my mother made my sister and I interact with my brother a lot so that we'd all get it. Like, I have a picture actually of my brother showing little red spots. And then with me and my sister in the tub with him, not having spots. The point of this bath was to make sure that we all got chickenpox. My mom says it was not horse hockey. This is why you did this. But it's so that we all get chickenpox. We all got chickenpox and everything was fine. However, a few years later, like say actually during my dissertation, I come down with this searing, burning pain where it feels like someone's taking a cigarette and stabbing me with a burning cigarette right here, to the point where I get a couple of big scabs right here. Those scabs are called shingles. Shingles happen because I got chickenpox and it stays around. It is latent. You never fully get rid of it. That's actually one of the reasons why you don't get the chickenpox sickness, because your body's just always inoculated with it. And it lives in a particular place. They're going to live on the roots of your nerves. They're going to choose a spinal root to live on. Mine chose the spinal root that lines up right here. It is my T6 nerve. Oh, yours is on one of your, like up here on your scalp? Yeah, that means it's one of your cranials or one of your cervicals. But yeah, mine is right here. So when I had my shingles outbreak due to stress of finishing a dissertation, it happened right here. So now not only do I know that I had chickenpox, I also know exactly where that virus now lives. Now, you can actually get vaccines and stuff now to prevent the outbreaks and also reduce their severity so it doesn't feel as bad. But yeah, it's bad. Like, I literally have a scar right here from my outbreak that happened.
That is not. It's in denial because it felt like my hair part.
Your shingles did? Huh. That's problematic.
It was very interesting. I felt like I had the worst sunburn ever around my part, and it was just from here to the crown.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, this is weird. I've never been sunburned. It's just I've been outside swimming lessons and all of that's going on. I couldn't figure it out. And then it started shifting down to my ear, and I've been water skiing. I thought, well, maybe I have inner ear infection or something. And then the next day it shifted down to my jaw on the side of my head. So it was the whole right side, just from the crown to the forehead to right here. And then the next morning, I'm like, something's wrong. I had this, I'd also, my eye started bothering me. I'd mowed the yard and got a little rock in my eye somehow through my glasses that I was wearing. And so all these weird things that were happening, me just dismissing them in denial that I would even have shingles or even know what it felt like on my scalp. And then my nose started itching. And first thing I went in and told my doctor all these things. And he says, did your nose start itching? I said, yes, it just started this morning. He says, who's your ophthalmologist? And I said, next door. And he said, he told us to just call him and I was coming up. And sure enough, he says, you have shingles. I said, but I'm only 40 something years old at the time. And I was just like, but no, I had every reason to have shingles. I was very stressed.
I was 29.
Yeah, that's young. Really young.
Dissertations, woo! I was not. That was probably the heaviest I've ever been. But yeah, no, bad. Not fun. Don't recommend it. Yep, get your vaccines.
Stress too.
Get your vaccines. Yeah, good luck with that. Yeah, try and de-stress, but it's like telling people not to breathe at this point. Yeah, don't have stress in your life. Well, that means you can do nothing important. Yep, exactly. All right, so here we've got the different plexuses. Here we go. All right, so here we can see a picture of our cervical plexus. This one is one of the most complicated of our plexuses, as you might imagine. One, because we're in the cervical region, but two, it's because we also have these blue lines right up here, which are actually nerves from places other than these cervical spinal nerves. Okay, so here we have C1, C2, C3, C4, C5, but we've also got some extra nerves coming in right down here and here and here. These two up here are cranial nerves, adding their nervous impulses to the bunch, which is super fun. This one, though, this nerve right here is special because this is actually your phrenic nerve. So phrenic is going to be a root, meaning diaphragm. So it means this is going to be the nerve that's going to be going to our diaphragm so that we can breathe, so help us breathe. So what this tells you is that as long as you don't have a break in your spinal cord above this level right here, so this is C3, then we're still going to get intact information to and from the diaphragm via the phrenic nerve, which means you can continue breathing. This is why it's possible for someone to be quadriplegic, so having lost use of their arms and legs while still being able to breathe, and that's because their break in their spinal cord happened lower than C2 or C3. Okay, that means their break could have been kind of here. Okay, the next one down is going to start at C5. Okay, so C5 is where we're going to start the brachial plexus. Okay, so brachial plexus means that we're going to be feeding our arms. So we can see C5, C6, C7, C8, and even T1 all coming together to form this big network, thus a plexus, and they're all leading towards the arms. The 5 major outputs of this plexus are going to be our musculocutaneous nerve, our median nerve, our axillary nerve, which goes to our armpit. Then we have the radial and ulnar nerves. And all of these kind of tell you where they're going, with the exception of the musculocutaneous. But if we follow those nerves down, our musculocutaneous is going to be this nerve right here. You can actually feel it. So if you kind of put a little bit of tension on your biceps, you'll be able to feel a little bit of space in between your biceps and your triceps muscle. At which point, if you dig your fingers in there, you should be able to feel a couple lines. The lines you're going to feel are going to be your musculocutaneous blood vessels, and you'll also find your musculocutaneous nerve. It's called musculocutaneous because truly it is found in this particular spot. It is found in your muscles, or in between your muscles and your skin. Okay, so right there. So you should be able to feel some wires. Okay, or at least like a wire. That wire that you're palpating and moving up and down, that is your musculocutaneous nerve. Don't push on it too hard. I saw that because you like winced. We're just trying to feel it, not injure it. We have our axillary nerve back here, pointing towards the axillary region. Then down here, we're going to move down towards the ulnar nerve. Ulnar, because it's going down to by the ulna, so pinky side. The one by the thumb side is going to be our radial nerve, and then we're going to have one going straight down the middle, which is going to be the median nerve. Median because it's in between the radial and the ulnar. Basically. All right, now here we've got our lumbar plexus, so L1 through L5, conveniently all of them. One big branch of this is going to be our obturator nerve that's going to pass through the obturator foramen. We also have our femoral nerve, which is going to take care of the anterior side of our thigh. And we also have our genitofemoral nerve, which is going to be a small nerve that's going to be moving down here towards both the femoral region and the genital region, so kind of in this kind of spot down here, but not going through the obturator foramen. So this one, notice that we are going through the obturator foramen. So thus we are the obturator nerve. That obturator foramen, remember, is that big hole in the coxal bones. This big nerve right here going kind of everywhere. This is our femoral nerve. We also have a big branch of it going down through the medial side of the knee. This is going to be called the great saphenous nerve. Okay. The saphenous nerve. There's the great saphenous vein is what's right here as well on the veins. Part of us learning the blood vessel or the nerves and stuff right now is going to try and make it a little bit easier for you to learn the blood vessels next month once we start AMP2. All right, then we get into the sacral plexus. The sacral plexus is going to be dealing with same with leg stuff, but this time we're going to be running our primary nerves down the posterior side of the leg instead of on the anterior side. So our primary output of our sacral plexus here is going to be our sciatic nerve. Okay. We also have the pudendal nerve, which is going to be important, but we primarily have our sciatic nerve here. Sciatic nerve is going to be this big bundle of nerves going right down here, just past your ischial tuberosity. Remember, when I said that we sit right here on our ischial tuberosity, that is why people that sit a lot are the ones that are going to be more often complaining about sciatic nerve pain, because there's like, it's easy to get this nerve in between the bone and whatever it is you're sitting on and impinge it and start to get some pain running through because of that. But we're going to be able to follow this down, at which point it will split, and it will split into form our common fibular nerve and our tibial nerve. Tibial nerve is going to follow the backhand side of the tibia. The common fibular nerve will split, and we're going to kind of have a medial and an anterior portion of that. Okay, now all of this is here once again so that we can get nervous input to the brain and so that we can get nervous output from the brain telling our effectors what to do. Okay. But sometimes we don't need to always bother the brain. For instance, if I am touching something hot like a skillet while that skillet is on, I need to not have my hand stay in that skillet for very long. The longer it stays there, the more damage is occurring to my tissues and stuff like that. So we want to get it away as fast as we possibly can. So your spinal cord is also going to contain the ability to tell your muscles what to do, just in case something like this occurs, without having to go through the brain, where your spinal cord can make the decision. We call these kinds of things reflexes, okay? So what happens in a reflex is we have a sensory receptor send information through the sensory neuron, and it gets to the gray matter of the spinal cord, where we have that interneuron. That interneuron says, hey, this is enough stimulus. This hurts bad enough. You should just move your hand so once again we can avoid damage. But at the same, so what it's going to do then, it's going to send a signal out to a motor nerve. And at the same time that it starts to send a signal out into your muscles, it will also send a signal up to your brain that says, hey, we have pain in this area. So it sends two signals at the same time. Okay. One of those to the brain, one of those out to the muscle. But the one that's out to the muscle is direct. It goes to the muscle and tells the muscle what to do. Your muscles move and you withdraw from whatever is causing the painful stimulus. Okay. Oftentimes, for instance, when your hand is touching the skillet because you're stupid and you're moving away around the pat of butter with your bare hand while the skillet is on, and you happen to have touched the center of the skillet, you do that and you withdraw your hand before you notice that your hand hurts. That's because this signal here is going to be really, really fast. It's short. It doesn't have to go to the brain. The signal that goes up to the brain that tells you, hey, this hurts, has to travel a long way, also has to be analyzed, and all that fun stuff. Usually, you can actually move away from the painful stimulus before your brain even tells you that it's hurting. But if you've ever noticed that before, that is why. That's because we have this kind of direct connection between the sensory neuron and the muscles that you're going to move. Okay. Now, we do have different types of reflexes, though. The one I gave you as an example is what we call a polysynaptic reflex. Polysynaptic meaning we have more than one nerve interaction. Okay, so remember when two nerves talk to each other, they talk at a synapse. Polysynaptic means we're going to have at least two synapses. Okay, so sensory neuron up through. We have one interface right here with the interneuron, and we have another interface right here between the interneuron and the motor neuron. So this sort of withdrawal reflex is an example of a polysynaptic reflex. Now, here in a minute, when I let y'all hit each other with hammers, this is an example, this patellar reflex is an example of a stretch reflex, in which case we are feeling the stretch in the muscles using some spindle organs inside the muscles to sense the amount of stretch and tension that we're placing on them. They're going to sense that stretch, and then they're going to try and equalize the pressures all across all of the muscle. So they're going to sense that some of these fibers are stretched. They'll send a signal through the sensory neuron, which interfaces directly with the motor neuron, so that we will twitch the rest of the muscle to try and equalize all of the pressures across all of them. Okay, so that is how our reflexes are going to work. Now, in the case of the stretch reflex, like in our muscles, like I said, we are using a muscle spindle. So this is basically something that tells our brain how much stretch we're placing on a given muscle. So like if you go ahead and stretch, you can actually feel how much tension you're placing on the muscle through these muscle spindles. Where you're getting that signal of like, okay, this is how much I'm stretching this thing is actually coming through these muscle spindles, which are inside the muscle cells. Okay. Now, that signal that goes out telling us to twitch the muscles to try and equalize across them, at the same time as that it's sending a signal to tell the one muscle what to do, it will also be sending an inhibitory signal to the antagonist for that particular motion. So say we're just, as an example, our primary mover in this case is our biceps brachii. That's our agonist. The antagonist for flexion at the elbow with our biceps brachii would be our triceps brachii. So at the same time that we send a signal to our biceps to contract, we're going to send an excitatory signal to our biceps telling it to contract. At the same time, we're going to also send out an inhibitory signal to the triceps telling it not to, telling it to relax. This way we can move that muscle very, very quickly. We're not trying to have a nice, slow, controlled movement here. It is truly like we want to move typically away from the thing as fast as we possibly can. So this way we have a small kind of low scale twitch of the muscles just out of the way. The same thing will happen in our withdrawal reflexes. We just have an extra synapse here talking with our interneuron. That interneuron, though, is important, though, so that we can also send a signal up to the brain telling it what's going on. Now, reflex testing is actually going to be very important. That's because we're going to use these in many cases to determine proper muscle function or proper nerve function, okay? Or in some cases, even proper spinal function, okay? If you have damage to the muscles, well, they're not going to do what they're supposed to do. They're not going to be able to go through the reflex. If you have damaged the nerves that innervate those muscles, they will also not have the reflex work the same way. They might be hypoactive, they might be hyperactive, or they might not work at all. The same thing goes with damage to the spinal cord. Like if you have damaged your spinal cord at, say, T2, a reflex that requires L1 to work isn't going to work, just simply because we're not able to get everything through there. Like the highway of information is no longer like intact. We've broken a bridge. So no rodents can get to Rome at that point, right? But so damage to these reflexes or damage to these areas we'll be able to see based off of whether or not the reflexes are able to work the way that they're supposed to. Okay, so that's why we actually do, or why you will sometimes have or see these things get used in various clinical settings. All right, so on your tables, we have a couple of models. If y'all wanted to look at the various parts and pieces of spinal cords, make sure y'all look at these, or make sure you're using the pictures in your book or the pictures in the PowerPoints or whatever. Find all the parts and pieces of the spinal cord that y'all need to find based off of the outline. I also have a couple of hammers lying around for y'all to do the reflex testing if you would like to. And I have a book up here with the instructions on how to do it. Everybody good? All right. Then we can get to it. Oh, one thing I will also say is that next time when we come in, we are going to go over general senses, special senses. We will also do a special senses reflex test. So we'll look at the pupillary light reflex. We're not doing it today because it doesn't involve the spinal cord, because that's the whole point with cranial nerves, is that it doesn't involve the spinal cord. And we will also do an eye dissection. So because of that, that's a lot. So before we come in next time, I do want everybody to have gone over the anatomy of the special senses. Okay, that way we don't have to spend a whole lot of time. Like I'll still go over it, but it'll be very quick. Like it'll just be, hey, remember retina, sclera, all these kinds of things. We'll point out those kinds of stuff, but hopefully we'll have at least enough of that stuff behind us that it'll just be a quick review so that we can start cutting open an eyeball and doing that kind of fun stuff. Good?